WR, your mobile headed to San Clemente.
Yeah, QSL, I just entered San Clemente city limits. Don't know how my signal is, but if not, you can wait till the end of the next round to call on me. Back to you, Milt.
Well, you're okay, Darcy. A little bit of snapping, but, you've got full capture on the machine. Go ahead. What you got going for today other than work?
Well, interestingly enough, over the weekend I went on the internet, what else they do over this daylight saving, and looked about other countries that do observe it, other countries that don't observe it, even within our own country, in Arizona, and also the Indian nations that occupy that territory, or I should say the state now. Some do, some don't. Kind of interesting stuff.
Yes, sir, it is, and it's food for thought. It's always interesting to see the interface and things like that go along with it. And moving down to Don, W6ZZW, the Hills of Beverly, N6MG in the net at 9.
Yeah, well, a nice cool day like this, I think I'm going to get the old shears out, as it were, and cut down some overgrowth in the property. It's nice and cool. It's a good day to do that. So that was a really interesting comment from David. I never knew what that meant, Phil. Now I know. That's what's wonderful about this net. You always learn something. And that's all I got. So real quick, net at noon today on the West Los Angeles VA repeater. If you can hit it, more information, go to radionet.vet, VET, and get the information on our site. We're going to be on air, as it were, at straight up at noon. So that's all I got, noon. Excuse me. So that's all I have for the net today, Milt. Everybody, including yourself, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you at net at noon, or maybe at Carrot tonight at 9. Whiskey 6 Sulas with a whiskey.
You bet, Don. See you later. Mike and Laughlin, I'm sorry, buddy, I jumped over you. KK6ULC N6MG.
Hello there, Milt. How you doing? And I guess it's coming up on Veterinarians Day, and everybody who has a pet out there, you make sure you take care of your veterinarian. Take care of your pets, and they're just very talented people. So happy Veterinarians Day. Yeah, KK6ULC.
You bet, Mike. Thanks for being here, buddy. I appreciate your checking in. Marty, KN6PRA, 3-day camping trip, 3-day tent camping trip, Thanksgiving, all the logistics that go with it, the pet, bringing a pet or not bringing a pet, I don't know. Fill us in on some of those details, Marty. That's really got my curiosity going.
KM6PRA. Yeah, we're bringing the pet. Well, anybody that knows anything about tents knows that if you have a two-person tent, it's really a one-person tent. So we have a 3-season, 4-person tent, and the biggest problem is insulating yourself from the ground. Especially up there in Hungry Valley over Thanksgiving, it could be 80 degrees or it could be 20 degrees. So what we do is we have 2 big wool blankets we lay down on the floor of the tent, and then the wife and I have some inflatable camping air mattresses that have an R value of 6, which is about the best you can get. Then I put down 2 closed cell foam mats for camping that we put the dog beds on. And then we have 4 sleeping bags. We have one for the wife and I, and then 2 other ones. Sometimes we'll put one down on the ground on top of the wool blankets, and other times we'll just put them on top of us and cover the dog beds and stuff. So the important thing is trying to keep warm. If it's 20 degrees out, it's tough to keep warm because we don't have a generator, no heater, none of that stuff. going to take my 891 and my battery box, and I'll take my solar panel because the wife's going to want to be able to charge her cell phone. But yeah, the biggest logistic is the food and the water. You know, we'll be camping with the truck right there, so we'll have to take 3 or 4 cases of water, I guess. And then, you know, the solar panel, the big solar panel we'll take. And we take our cooler and we freeze all the food except for the first day's worth. And instead of using ice, what we do is we freeze water bottles, because that way when they thaw out, you can drink them, and it keeps the cooler dry because, you know, there's no water from melting ice. But, yeah, it's kind of a logistical nightmare. That's why we've been working on it for about 2 weeks already, and we got 2 left. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. We got a good tent, good insulation for the floor. We'll have plenty of food. I got a little transient alcohol stove that we'll be cooking on. Got a couple of little backpacking camping chairs to sit in. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time. KM6PRA, back to net.
KM6PRA N6MG, all noted. Thank you for those details and where you're going to get your electricity from. I didn't know whether you brought a little small, you know, light plant or a little small, you know, like generator with you. So that is good, and a lot of details. And I know a lot. I've still got a bunch of questions. 3 days in the tent, like I said, that's a while, but a nice sizable tent. John, AJ6F from N6MG, are you thinking about like a doorknob type capacitor, or you know what? I use doorknobs. You know, at the feed point of my Yagi, I have a big old, walnut-sized, a little bit bigger doorknob capacitor across the feed point that helps a lot, but. John, what are you doing? What are you thinking capacitor-wise on those antennas, or any other comments you may have? AJ6F N6MG.
Yeah, Milt, everything I've read says you should put a 100 microfarad capacitor across the terminal, particularly for operating the NFET at the higher frequencies, 17 through 10. I'm not quite sure which one or what type to use, though, so I'm not quite sure what a doorknob one is. I know the round ceramics that are 1,000 volts, I think you can get them up to 1,500 volts. It's probably what I'll do, because, again, I want to be able to run some power through this. Camping, I'm getting ready. We'll be doing a 5-day trip to Grand Canyon over the Thanksgiving break. But fortunately, I have a trailer, so it's a little easier than Marty's setup of having to deal with the cold. I've got a heater, I got a bed, and I'll have hookups. But I also have a generator if need be. I also have solar hooked up. So that's about the only thing I got planned. And yeah, if you have any information or advice on the capacitor, if you maybe just email me that, it would be great, because doesn't seem to be a lot out there on what kind of capacitor to use, just kind of the value and that you need it. AJ6F, back to Milton.
Roger. Okay, well, if a doorknob, if you could imagine like a 1-inch wooden dowel that's like maybe an inch and a half long, with a female screw receptacle on one side and then the same on the other side, and you feed it in series, and they come in extremely high voltage, which I don't know what the voltage at the exact feed point of my Yagis are, but that's what I did, was I just fed it across the feed point there, and maybe David might know a little bit more about that, but we'll see. Jim, hello, KB6TKA N6MG.
the subject. I was in across the hall, as you would say. I didn't hear what the subject was.
Well, there's not exactly a defined subject as such. We just kind of left it open with Marty and his comments on the week long, and then enough things came up with a high voltage capacitor at the feed point, and some things like that. Midge's weekend away in Palm Springs area, devoted a weekend to herself, and that's about it. No real defined second round topic.
Okay, well, just pretty much about Thanksgiving and all that. Yeah, we'll be at home. I spend many Thanksgiving out in the desert, and mainly quartzsite this time of year. And but since I sold my trailer and everything, I don't hit the desert anymore. So other than that, just gonna hang out here, and Marty's going up to Hungry Valley. Used to be Hungry Valley Road. They changed it to Smoky Bear Road, but is the one turnoff up there. I don't know where he probably goes up Maze. Probably goes up through Gorman maybe or something. But see what else. That's about it. I'm in here getting busy. I got one batch of cookies done, and I'm getting ready to start my snickerdoodle. So KB6TK back to the net.
You bet, buddy. Always good to know you got something going on. You're either pounding nails or screwing in those Torx head screws. But on that bird, that was a surprise when I discovered that. He assembles his birdhouses and uses screws, but not just screws, but Torx head screws, because they're just easier to handle. And I admit that there's a lot to that. You just stick that bit in the slot and let it go. Oh, Jerry. KB6JBL N6MG.
Hey, Bill, I don't have a single thing going on. I'm going to rustle up some food here, and a loaf of bread is in the kitchen. It needs to go in the oven, in a Dutch oven, for a while to bake up, and that's it for the morning. And then I got some conference calls to a couple of doctors' questions and confirm appointments, that kind of thing. Just the usual carrying on. Thanks for running a net. We'll pick you up at, some of you at 9 this evening. Hi, Mike in the desert. KD6JBL, back to net. Thanks for running at 73.
You bet, buddy. No problem at all. I'm glad you could join us, and everybody seems to have something. We all seem to be aimed in the right direction here this morning. I appreciate that. Worthy? I'm sorry, Jim. Well, we got Jerry. N6SKE Worthy in Yorba Linda. Nothing heard. Tom, 6ETC N6MG.
This is Tom, Whiskey 6 Echo Tango Charlie. From Tustin. Interesting conversation this morning. I'm not very, let's say, I'm electronic challenged, so to speak, especially the component side. Yeah, believe it or not. And I looked up the doorknob capacitors that you guys were, capacitors that are termed doorknobs, and found, interesting enough, they are called doorknob capacitors. Wanted to make sure I knew if there was any differentiation between one used for various applications, including but not limited to transmitters. And yeah, there are some that seem to be specific to they call them doorknob transmitting capacitors. They're ceramic type transmitters. Milt, is that the type of capacitor that you were referring to?
Well, it's kind of difficult to explain. I just looked it up myself here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm fixing to email John a link to something that I saw here on eBay. But nonetheless, good definition and a little bit of data on them. That is what I would suggest. And yes, I would agree that it is a high voltage. It is a transmit type environment that it is used in as opposed to other purposes. So I just wanted you to, to at least have that information, and you are correct there.
Okay, well, this is coming from someone that knows very little about it, let alone understanding the concept. But organizations, I've seen this before, rfparts.com have doorknob, what they call doorknob capacitor or doorknob style. Another one called surplussales.com has what they call doorknob transmitting capacitors. And how one determines which ones they need is maybe another discussion later. Anyway, thus far, enjoying everybody's conversation. Good to hear people are doing well. A couple of operators who haven't heard on the net for a while checked in this morning. Thank you for checking in. Hey, and Marty, for the keeping on with the keeping on, I agree with that 100%. W6ETC, back to N6MG.
You bet. Thanks, Tom. And John, AJ6F, I just emailed you a link. I don't know that that's the exact capacitor or the exact value that you would need, but nonetheless, you can see what I'm talking about there. And I appreciate that. KB6OVO, John, Cedar Pines Park, N6MG.
Hey, Milton the Net. KB6OVO here. Well, not much to talk about here with regards to antennas and capacitors and whatnot. I did the Friday morning show. And immediately afterwards left for a haircut across town. A gal that cuts hair out of her house instead of paying to run a shop. And on the way home, I had a rock jump out and bite my tire and blew out a tire on my truck. Had to put four new tires on the 4x4 on Saturday. That was my big project for the weekend. I had one other tire that was cosmetically damaged. It looked maybe worse than that. I don't know. It held up thus far, but then the blown out one, it was just time for 4 new. So that's what I did. Back to net, KB6OVO.
Well, certainly a necessary, although not solicited, but a necessary expense there. That's not very bueno, and a surprise. So, at any rate, Jeff is on the side. Doug, 84AL, N6MG.
AL, this is Doug in Oceanside. Milt, can you repeat the question? I've been kind of browsing around here and lost track of it.
Sure. So, Caller, we've covered Veterans Day. We've covered mud baths. Marty's coming up 3-day camping trip. John's quest for the feed point capacitor and comments about that. And Marty's camping trip is a 3-day tent camping affair for Thanksgiving, and how he handles a lot of the logistics, which really, the more, I guess I was trying to overthink it, but the more you apply just the regular old common sense, the more things fit into place. Like, instead of, a source of ice is, like plastic milk jugs or something like that, and then as they defrost, you can drink it. So just basically kind of open to things like that and maybe things that are coming up.
Okay, thank you. Well, no mud baths scheduled, no camping scheduled for us. I think there's going to be a lot of movie watching. My wife likes to watch movies, and she corrals me into the living room to watch 1 or 2 or 3 movies, and so we'll probably do that today. Not much else planned. As far as feed point capacitors, I have no clue, and I would have to look it up. I did look at those doorknob capacitors. Interesting, multi-kilovolt capacitors in a disc, like a disc shape. So I'd be curious as to how exactly they're used, for an antenna application. I'll have to look that up, or maybe somebody could explain it. But anyway, not much else going on. Just browsing Facebook here and typing in a few comments and enjoying the net. Everybody have a great day. 73-AD4AL. Back to you.
Okay, you bet, Doug. Well, I can tell you, without having to go into a lot of really technical detail, which I believe we probably got a few guys here on the net that could go more into it if they would care to do so, but there's two factors there at your antenna, and that's inductance and capacitance. And you can, I can't get into the technicals because I don't want to misquote and say something that's obviously wrong. But all I know is putting a big old doorknob, and I'm sorry it's been years, I don't remember the value, but putting a doorknob capacitor across the feed point greatly improved the impedance on my antenna. So it was just a trial and error type thing when that happened, when it was installed many years ago. So with that, I'll go on, and I'll pass it to David next. Perhaps he can add to that. KK6M N6MG. Hey, Doug. David.
Oh, well, good morning, everyone. This is David, KK6M. Yeah, I've not had to do that. Usually, homebrew project for an antenna may require that, but or if you're loading it from the bottom. Is that what you did, Milt? Were you loading the antenna from the bottom?
No, sir. I understand what you're getting at there, and no, sir, it's a Yagi. Down in Five Land, the last big antenna that I built, homebrew antenna, was a 4-element 20-meter monobander on a 52-foot boom, and I had it at 100 feet, and using the W2PV dimensions, and that's the last place the next to last place that I used one, and that antenna played very nice. Here, it was KT34XA at 68 feet, 69 feet, and I did it there also, and it just seemed to play better. But those were my applications. David, go ahead.
Okay, well, yeah, I've used the KT34XA, and currently I have a KT34MA, which is a little bit shorter, and I just use the balun that comes with the antenna. I didn't need to do a doorknob capacitor across there, but I've never used one. So what I can tell you is I'd have to look it up and do a little research on it. But whatever makes the match the best, that's what is required. So you're going from balanced to unbalanced there, and so you're going to have make sure that your matching is correct. The ohms to the ohms. It has to be. You don't want to be a mismatch there. You'll just lose a lot of energy. Anyway, going to run over to the post office and drop this little check off to the LA County tax collector, and a whole stack of QSL cards. I went back over the last 2 months and wrote out a big stack of QSL cards, and I had to go get the international stamp, and currently it's $1.35. So so $1.35 for postage, for international postage, and then whatever else FASE will require to get some of these cards back. I just wish everyone would just use LOTW and stop making a big money-making game out of this QSL business. It's it drives me absolutely nuts. You know, some of these stations use QSL managers, and it ends up being a money-making proposition for the DX station, which really it shouldn't be. It's a QSL is the final courtesy of the QSO, and I just hope we can return to that. Okay, with that, I'll say 7-3 for now and rest my voice. All good. See you later, Milt. KK6 out.
W6ETC.
Yes, sir. Tom, go ahead.
I have a question. Apologize if it seems like a dumb question. Using this doorknob capacitor, is that a type of capacitor that is placed at the antenna to make sure that the antenna is electrically shorter, or would that increase the efficiency of the antenna due to its increase of radiating length? Is that what we're referring to?
N6MG for ID. Well, that's what you hope for, is more efficiency in the antenna. There's nothing like, exactly 52 ohms into a perfectly resonant, electrically, determined pattern. But that is what it's for, and it's placed at the antenna itself, generally at the feed point. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, and I'm trying to understand the efficiency of the antenna as well. Especially, you mentioned earlier, you can add an inductor or loading coil to cancel out capacitive reactance to make the antenna electrically longer. And the capacitor is placed on the antenna. That makes the antenna electrically shorter. But does that necessarily mean that it's the most efficient way of doing that as well? For example, I have a vertical HF antenna, and I haven't used it, but I've seen people who have used, for example, on a vertical, they could use a capacitance hat or a loading coil. The big question is, I guess it would depend on the type of antenna used, and what happens when you get into that complex portion of the reactance. Don't you want that like to be zero? And that could be kind of tricky too. W6CTC.
AJ6F.
Very good. Thank you for saving me, John. AJ6F N6MG.
Yeah, in my specific case, the reason I need the capacitor is to offset the inductance of my transformer at higher frequencies. From 20 meters to 160 meter, the type 43 mix of toroid is perfectly fine, doesn't need the capacitance. Unfortunately, at higher frequencies, the inductance comes up. So for an in-fed, for that transformer, that unun, in order for it to work at higher frequencies, such as 17, 15, 12, and 10, or 6, you need the capacitance to offset the inductance. You want the imaginary part. So you want the resistance, the real part, to be 50, and the imaginary part to offset each other. One is plus j omega, the other is minus j omega, inductance versus capacitance. So you want that imaginary at 0, so that the 50 real is what your system sees. That's all it's about. So for me, it's because the performance of the inductor at higher frequencies is more, or the performance of the transformer at higher frequencies is more inductive. So I need it to offset. AJ6F.
KR6JK.
Hey, KR6JK. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Interesting conversation. Usually those capacitors are put in series with the feed point, in other words, the center of the coax, and they aren't very big. Just reading here a little bit in the antenna manual, and this is something I had to look up to refresh my memory, but they're in the order of picofarads, like
like they're seeing a maximum of 150 should probably be enough, but they need to be high voltage, and that's what a doorknob capacitor is all about. Doorknobs were typically used in television, the old television sets where you had a CRT, and the doorknob was the high voltage filter capacitor, and they're not very many microfarads, if they're even that. They're probably in the picofarad range. Anyway, put it in series with your center conductor, but it will need to be high voltage, because if you're running, I think I heard you say 1,000 watts, that's a lot of voltage. So the higher the voltage, better. You don't want it to break down, because that'll cause you some agony, serious. Anyway, KR6JK, back to net. Hope I clarified the air a little bit here.
KK6M question.
Go ahead, David.
What kind of antenna are we talking about here? I'm kind of curious.
Well, John was talking about putting up an antenna with his homebrew hunting, and I'm not sure the configuration that he'll put it up in, but that's, I think, what we're talking about. John?
Yeah, I'm talking an in-fed half-wave, 80 meter on down, and this capacitance is across the input main center conductor to the shield, and it's, again, to offset the inductance at higher frequencies. If I run a 20 meter through 80, I wouldn't need the capacitance, but the challenge with the FT24043 is it gets more inductive at higher frequencies, and so you got to offset that inductance with the capacitance. Typically it's 100 picofarad, and most people are using 1,000 volt, but I don't know with running an amplifier if I got to increase that voltage to maybe a kilovolt type of ceramic capacitor. That's what I'm thinking, that I'd have to increase the voltage of it since I'm going to run up to 1,000 watts through it.
W6CTC.
Go ahead, Tom.
Quick question. Did I hear John right? He said 100 picofarad, not 10 picofarad?
John?
Yeah, so 100 picofarad is, from everybody's designs that I can find on the internet, about the standard. Some could say 110, but generally 100 to 110 picofarads. And again, it's across the center conductor to the shield that it's put on. So it's put inside of the box where my unknown will be.
Thank you, Cosell.
KR668.
Yes, sir, Jim.
Yeah, putting that capacitor across like that will compensate for the inductance buildup that'll happen at the different frequencies that you're encountering. A lot of times, if you have a vertical antenna, that capacitor is put at the base, and it's remotely tunable so that you can compensate over the range of frequencies that you might use a vertical for. But if you're just trying to compensate for some amount of inductance that changes as you change the frequency, you can get a relatively even inductance or impedance match by using a fixed value there, KR6JK.
Okie dokie. Time is becoming an issue here. Let's go ahead, Midge in Seal Beach.
W6LIK, electrically challenged, but I have one question. We're working with such high voltages. Is there any protection for the person that is putting these capacitors on and so forth, and these transmitters? Is there any danger? W6LIK, back to them.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I acknowledge your question, and no, ma'am, there is no danger unless you're trying to do this modification to a Yagi that's at, 100 feet on top of the tower where you got to climb up and put your belt around the mast and to install it. No, ma'am, there's no electrical danger at all. Unless you're doing this in some pool, keys up the antenna, then you'll get an RF burn. But no, ma'am, no electrocution danger, and it's mostly done on the ground in your shop or somewhere else and then put up in the air and worked. It's not like AC current at all, okay?
Comment, ULC?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
All right. I'm not positive about the doorknob capacitors that you're talking about, but anytime you mess with a capacitor, before you do any work, before you solder it in or before you put it into where it's going to go, always take a wire and go from one end to the other end of the capacitor to make sure there's no charge in there. Because a lot of capacitors, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not electronic, I'm an electrician, a lot of capacitors could hold an electrical charge. And take an insulated wire in, just go from one end to the other end without it being hooked up, just to make sure there's no voltage stored in that capacitor. Because a lot of capacitors store electricity. It never hurts to try that. It's not going to hurt it, and it protects you. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what you should do. KK6ULC, Mike, in Lapa, Nevada.
KR6JK.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that capacitor discharging would be for a large value capacitor in the microfarad range, like 2, 3, 4, 500 microfarads, where you're operating with a tube amplifier that runs 400 volt plate voltages. You have a large filter capacitors in there, and yes, you should discharge them. If the built-in leakage circuit doesn't drain them for you. One of the things about old television sets, the CRT acts as a very large capacitor, and even if you discharge it carefully, they can still shock you because they have a bad habit of doing that, and you're running around 20,000 volts there. So anyway, yeah, it's a good idea, but generally that's on larger capacitors in the microfarad range of hundreds, rather than picofarad capacitors that you'd be using on an antenna. KR6JK.
Okay, Jim, thank you for that. Time is becoming an issue, but let me address one thing. Midge, are you still with us?
Roger.
Okay, I want to kind of put things into perspective for you when we talk about microfarads and picofarads and things like that. There's just impossible, I guess, to put too many zeros in a number when you're talking about capacitance and how it's measured. But the standard is a farad, F-A-R-A-D. And I figured out one time a farad is an unbelievable large number. For example, a farad, and this is what I actually figured, and I don't remember it verbatim, but a farad, Midge, is like a farad of gold, okay, would be like the size of a football field and like 13 or 14 inches deep. That's how large a farad is. That's why we get into microfarads and picofarads, and I'm just pulling this out of the air, but maybe even, I don't know, a nanofarad. Is that a little bit more in perspective for you?
W6.
Okay, you broke up on that one, so I'm going to think you understood what I said. If not, let me know. Mike, I'll let you close it down with the last one, KK6ULC and 6MG.
yeah, no. Nice net. I like it. I'm not 100% electronically. I do a little electronic. Most of it I was like electrician. So when it comes to the small stuff, I'm not really good at it. I just call me a circuit board electrician because I can see circuit boards, no problem. But when it comes to resistors and transistors and diodes, stuff like that, I'm not good at it. I don't think I can fix circuit boards. You know, I can put it on a magnifying glass and look for any weak solder joints. It happens a lot. But I'm do my best. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Hope you all had a good weekend. This is KK6ULC Mike and Lofton Nevada with beautiful blue skies, no wind. I'm going to go fly my radio control airplane. Hopefully I don't crash. Back to you, Milt. Thanks for being on the net.
You bet, Mike, and it's always a pleasure hearing you. Okay, before I go into the closing scenario here, anybody, anywhere want to check in for the head count, N6MG?
Alpha Juliet 6, Golf November, Tony.
I've got a G6 Golf November. Tony, where are you located, Tony?
Good morning. It's Alpha Juliet AJ, Apple Juice 6, Good News, Golf November. Tony, and I'm in Phelan, California, so I'm on the other side of Mount Baldy, and somehow I managed to get around it, and Mike has been telling me to check in, so here I am. Thanks for picking me up.
Thank you, Tony, and I have your call corrected as to Alpha Juliet 6 Golf November. And yeah, you got a decent, got a good RF signal in from Phelan there in that portion of the county. And so that's it. Does anybody have anything they want to throw in before I close it down? Nothing heard. That's it for the Net at 9 for me and the Net at 9 Wellness and Support Net this morning. If there's any additional comments, late check-ins, or announcements before I close the net? Nothing heard? I have an email address for you if you'd like to contact me following today's net. I'm always interested in your comments, suggestions, and future topics. My email address is my call sign, November 6, Mexico, Germany, N6MG at Verizon.net. For now, this concludes the Net at 9 Wellness and Support Net. I'd like to thank all ham operators who checked in and those who stood by on the repeater so that we could meet. Thanks for those guys. There's a lot of them. I would also like to thank the Catalina Amateur Repeater Association and its trustees for the use of the repeaters in today's net. We couldn't do it without their permission. Why not consider joining Tom tonight at 9 p.m. or 2100 hours? Remember, stay safe, stay well, and keep your happy face on. Please make it a point to return and participate whenever you can, Monday through Friday, twice a day at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. God bless the rest of your day and throughout the week. Keep looking up. Keep that game face off. Keep the happy face on. I'm Milt. November 6th, Mexico, Germany for Net Control Operations, saying 73. And I'm now going to return the repeaters back to normal operations. Thank you, everybody, in 6MG clear.
Milt, this is ULC. Don't go away yet. I got a surprise for you.
I'm here, bro.
All right. You know how we're always saying, how you doing? How you doing this? How you doing that? Well, you got Tony out there, and that's Tony Soprano, only skinnier. You got to hear Tony, because Tony is a professional. He's the real deal. I'm just an old Jew trying to imitate an Italian. But listen to Tony. Tony, if you're still out there, how you doing?
You cracked me up, Mike. All right, so you put me on the spot here. But since your passion is evident, I'll give it my best shot. Hey, how you doing? Forget about it. You talking to me? No, I'm talking to you. Hey, and that's it. AJ6 Golf November.
Tony, are you a Paisan?
That's affirmative. Io sono Antonino Spampinato, sono americano, però mia madre e padre sono siciliano. Molto piacere.
Sicilian. My gosh, Mike, the real thing? I'm impressed.
Yeah,
I was
both my
trying to get
parents
Tony to
were
talk to
actually
you for
born
quite a
in
while.
Sicily.
Tony, this is a good
And
net. At 9
I was
o'clock
born
in the
here
morning
in
and 9
the
o'clock
States,
at night.
first generation
And that's
American,
milk.
100% Sicilian descent.
Mexico, Germany. KK6 UOC. I'm glad it all worked out, and I'm glad you got to hear the real deal. Talk to y'all later. Thanks, Tony. You're the man.
You know what? That was very interesting, the combination of RF and Echolink double, because I was actually, no, not 100%, but I was actually able to copy the gist of both conversations. And so, well, I'll end it with this, Tony. Thank you for checking in and joining us, and thank you for that, how you doing there. Mine is a New Orleans accent, which is very similar, but nonetheless. Please join us again, Tony, if you can. You know, if you're looking for a home in the morning or at 9 o'clock at night, just to visit with folks, we're here 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. 5 days a week on the weekdays. So come back and join us, Tony. This is N6MG.
AD4AL comment.
Yeah, Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say, good to hear Tony on here on the Caranet at 9. Yeah, Tony, next time you come back, do your Marlon Brando. That's excellent also. AD4AL. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Doug. And thanks, Mope. I appreciate you picking me up, and we will make it a point to catch you guys again on this repeater now that I know that I can make it. It's a pretty good shot for me, especially with the mountains right behind me. November 6th, Mike Golf. This is Alpha Juliet 6 Golf November 7-3, and to Kilo 6 Uniform Lima Charlie, and Alpha Delta 4 Alpha Lima, AJ 6 Golf November.
Again, thank you, Tony. We'll see you later. This is, again, N6MG Clear.
N6MG W6CTC. Very fun and interesting net this morning. Thank you very much for doing that, W6CTC.
Thank you, Tom. I'll see you tonight, N6MG.
N6MG, before you get away, there's a great article on the subject of NFED caps from Alpha India 6 X-Ray Golf. I say again, Alpha India 6 X-Ray Golf.com. He has an excellent write-up on all the reasons why a microfarad, 110 microfarad capacitor will help an NFED antenna. So AI6XG.com. Alpha Juliet 6 Golf November.
Thanks, Jim. I got that, and I'm going to give that some attention here just as soon as I put my notebook away. I appreciate that. How you doing? What's going on up there today?
No, that wasn't Jim. That was Tony again.
Oh, good grief. I'm sorry, Tony. Thank you for that comment. I did make note of that, and I am going to go check it out. It's an interesting subject. I think I have a couple of doorknobs out there. I've got one that I know of that's pretty much in use, but I want to check that out some more. And again, I appreciate that, sir.
Yep, thank you, sir. And if you're going to confuse me with anybody, being confused with Jim, AG6IF, that's a compliment. I appreciate it. AJ6 Golf November is clear.
N6MG.
Blink off. Timer on.